2, 1, action.
Good evening, everyone. Recommended action that the Board of Education leaves executive session at 7:50 p.m. and returns to the business meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance by Mrs. Moore's fourth grade class.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much to Mrs. Moore's class for that fantastic recitation of the pledge. I wanted to share just a couple of things happening in that class. First, that the students and Mrs. Moore had the unique opportunity of looping, meaning that they spent all of their third grade year together and are back together as a fourth grade family this year. It's one of those approaches that truly helps so many students in terms of maintaining the strong relationships that they've built with, of course, their teacher and with each other into a second year of learning together this year. They began the year in several different ways, thinking about the sense of belonging within their classroom and their connection with each other, including reading the book entitled The Best Part of Me, and then put together personal narratives themselves in the form of poetry about the part of themselves, their personalities, the way that they view the world that they feel best about, and had the opportunity to share that with each other. And they were very proud to share that with their teacher and with us when we got a chance to visit their class. So thank you very much, Mrs. Moore's class. Thanks for a great start to the year. We'll see you soon, Tigers.
Thank you very much. All right, well now, recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, we will now move into reports, and we're very happy to have Justin Wood from Nugent Hauser here this evening to present the audit. Did either of you want to?
Yes, I'd just like to introduce Justin. Justin is a partner with Nugent Hauser, our external auditing firm. He's been with Nugent Hauser for over 20 years and has been with the district, with our district for 6 years, providing oversight and financial guidance to us, and has done a wonderful job.
Oh,
So
thank you very much.
for joining us.
Thank you.
Justin.
Thank you. So I'm just gonna take the podium only so I can put my.
Okay, so Justin is going to give us a very high-level view of our financial position and some of what goes into establishing that. But before Justin begins, and I know that Justin is such an advocate for our team, I did just want to give some credit to our business office staff, who these individuals are directly responsible for the smooth and efficient running of our district. They are performing not only the day-to-day operational responsibilities, but they're doing that while navigating a maze of compliance and regulatory requirements in the process. So first and foremost, I'd like to say thank you and congratulations to our district treasurer, Barry Gamson, who reports directly to the Board of Education, is our district treasurer. He's a former auditor, so that serves the business office very well. And Barry is, just as Justin will share with you, has done an excellent job in guiding the fiscal practices of our district and also leading our team. Secondly, Risa Ross. Risa Ross is our payroll clerk. If those of you who don't know, 50% of our budget is payroll. It's over $25 million in payroll. Risa handles that single-handedly. Also, Susan Camilleri, who handles the other 50% of our budget, which is she handles purchasing and accounts payable for the district and has done a fine job. We have Sue Serrato, who handles like accounts receivable, all of our student activity funds, fixed assets. Then we have Joni Rendazzo, who handles our employee benefits and onboarding, with Jackie Meyer, who handles personnel. We have Tracy Borges and Denise Bisaccia, who handle budgeting, school lunch, risk management, and then lastly, and very importantly, the PPS department, Amy Wickman and Kaylin Ward, who handle some of our federal grants and our special education funding and PPS. So I'd like to thank them all. They are fabulous individuals and a great functioning team as well. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over.
Sorry if I
to
could preempt you one more
Oh,
time,
no.
because she would never do this herself. The board, I know that you know this as a team, the quality in terms of what you're about to hear, in terms of the review of the audit itself. An audit that clean doesn't come by chance. It comes through outstanding, thoughtful, dedicated leadership. And I want to make sure that Denise gets credit for that. So very, very well done.
And we refer to it, the tone at the top.
Yes,
That's the
yes,
tone
yes.
for the whole office.
Oh.
You certainly do, and your office certainly reflects it. So thank you very much. And I do so we spent the hour between 6 and 7 p.m. tonight with the audit committee. So I do just want to thank Omar, Theo, and Mary for joining that committee and going through this document in detail with me. I know it's not the most exciting hour of your life, but we went through the document. It was I really appreciate your insight and your commitment to the district in going over the audit report. So the audit report, just for some housekeeping type technical stuff, is for the year ended June 30th, 2022. There are 4 separate reports within this bound financial statement, 3 of which have opinions tied to those. The first of those reports is the report on the basic financial statements, which is the majority of this document. And within that, there is a unmodified opinion, or otherwise referred to as a clean opinion, which is our highest level of assurance that we can give. The other reports are, starting back on page 74, is the independent report on internal control, where we would list any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control. There were none. Another one of those reports is the independent auditor's report on compliance for each merger program on an internal control over compliance required by uniform guidance. That's the opinion on the single audit, which is an audit of individual grants. And in this case, those grants were the stimulus funds, the ARPA money that came in during the year, and we also zoned in on the special education grant. So again, unmodified clean opinion on the single audit. And then the last is the student activity funds on page 83. Again, unmodified, clean, highest level of assurance on the student activity funds. Just a couple other items of note. One of those being that the district is in great financial condition as far as fund balance goes. The reserves are very well funded. You can see a list of those reserves on page 35, if anybody would like to look. Listing each, like capital reserve, workers' compensation and such, that the district has utilized. The district has abided to the 4% rule of fund balance held in unassigned fund balance or available fund balance. New York State education law only allows districts to hold 4% of the following year's budget, and this district did abide by that rule. So I always like to bring that up as a rule. And also I'd like to bring up the fact that we issue what is called a management letter, where we would report any material adjusting journal entries, audit entries that we find during our audit, or material findings that we find throughout our audit. And I'm very happy to report that there were none. There were no audit adjustments made, which is the only audit I've done all summer where there were none, and there were no material findings to report. And that is a direct reflection of the job of Denise and Barry and all the staff of the business office at the district. As far as things that are coming up, there is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, who writes statements on a regular basis. We have what new and future ones are starting on page 36. One of note, where it didn't come into play this year, just based on the timing of the leases, is GASB 87 and which lease and how leases are recorded. So the district is entering into some new copier leases this year. So I'll work along with Barry and Denise on how that accounting will enter into their accounting systems as far as when they enter into those leases. So I've been in communications with them, and we'll work together throughout the year to ensure that if there's budget transfers to be made that relate to that, be upfront with it, or I should say forthcoming. And one point I would like to make, that in a compliment to this board and management of the district, is, and I made this point during the audit committee, is that they're proactive on the projection of fund balance and getting down to that 4%. And that involves having those up to amounts for the reserve set before year ends. So this board gets together with Denise's recommendations and Barry's recommendations as well, and discusses what reserves and up to what amount can be put into those reserves. That's a very important action done by the board before year ends. So I just want to commend everybody. And I'm more than open to any questions that anybody may have on the financial statements. Yes, sir.
Yes, in your covering letter and on page 36, going on, I guess going on 36, or maybe it goes on to 37, you list all of the new GASB statements. And I know we have had in the past statements that have created issues for us, like when OPED.
Okay, yes, which we discussed in the audit committee, but yes, absolutely, yeah.
Is there anything, first question, is there anything in these statements or these new accounting standards, 89, and 87, 89 to 101, that are going to be particularly challenging from either a budgetary or financial perspective for the district as you have seen it? And, or is it just more working with our staff to kind of report things the right way?
So the latter. So it's the reporting of it, right? So I had mentioned with the GASB 87 with the leases, there might be some budget transfers in regards to that one. And that's actually a really good example to use, because so now lease payments are going to be broken down as principal and interest. So for the new leases that the district enters into, instead of it coming out of a contractual code like it is now, it will now actually come out of a principal and interest code. So there will be like a budget transfer potentially made to ensure that those codes aren't overspent throughout the year. And that'll be something I work along with Barry during this year.
So that leads more specifically to statement 89, accounting for interest costs incurred before the end of a construction period. As you may be aware, the board is considering the possibility and of providing the public the opportunity to vote for a bond proposition for facilities improvement. So that is going to, if it is adopted by the board and then approved by the voters, provide for borrowing over a long period of time. That's going to have interest costs incurred
During the construction.
during the
period.
construction.
Yes.
So just so kind of we're all aware, what does that GASB statement 89 mean
Okay.
with respect to that borrowing, which we're hoping to be able to do?
It will not change the amount of interest you pay. It will not change where your interest is posted within the fund financial statements. It may, however, change how that interest may be capitalized on our district-wide statements, which are, are on a long-term basis. So the fund financial statements are on the short term, the budget year, the 12-month period, and the district-wide is on a long-term basis. So it may affect on the government-wide, but however, will not affect the amount of interest you pay or the amount budgeted for interest in the future. It may just affect the presentation of it within these financial statements in the government-wide financial statements.
And my last question is with regard to and this is a projection on your part, you don't have to answer.
Yeah,
it,
absolutely.
But with regard to an audit statement such as this and a financial condition as you have outlined or has been outlined in this audit, what kind of effect does that have
on the borrowers, the banks, or the bond purchasers, if we get down the road,
Yeah.
have on their consideration of our district's financial health and the bond interest.
Yeah, right.
Worthiness?
Yeah, right, worthiness both for ratings.
So your bond rating is based directly off of this information.
Okay.
Yes, and you're, every time you receive a bond, you get a new bond rating. And
I
we
believe
make
AA,
note of
double
that
A2.
in the MD&A.
Double A2.
AA2 on page 15, yeah, so your bonding companies will be using this document. This document is generally attached to your, the bond itself, in the bond
Dave
document.
Fisher.
So I guess the thing that we would ask is, well, parents, so how can we get to AA3 or AAA?
Just keep doing what you're doing. The district is headed in the right direction, and yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
On page 37, you mentioned future changes in accounting standards concerning conduit debt obligations. Do we have any such obligations, or do we anticipate any such obligations?
Conduit debt?
Conduit debt obligations.
No.
No,
So what are conduit debt obligations that we don't have? I mean, just because you mentioned that this is something that may affect us, so.
It's a kind of three-way,
so I have to be honest with
three-party
you.
debt obligation.
I would have to research the definitions of the
if you-
conduit debt obligation, yeah.
Yeah. I never heard of it.
My apologies, I would have to research.
An
it.
issue or a third-party obligor and a debt holder, the debt trustee, and I don't think we've ever done anything like that. I can't remember
It
anything like
does seem
that.
as if that there'll be like a middleman, right, in between you and who you're actually borrowing the money from. That's what I'm getting by reading from it, but I would have to follow up with you on a solid definition.
I just
of
want
what
to
a
say, just
conduit-
because it was mentioned.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I
We're required
wanted-
to
I mean,
report.
it was a new term to me, and I wanted to make sure that I understood whether perhaps I misunderstood whether we'd ever had such a thing.
It was a flow through, but I can't give a great
I
definition.
mean, so
of
you
it.
said we don't.
Not that I'm aware of, nothing.
Nothing that we
remotely-
already do, none of our existing bonding would consider. would
No.
consider.
Everything is
Okay,
direct.
That's really my,
Okay, thank
that
you. Yeah.
resolves my question. No need to.
Neil?
Yeah, we're required to read all the GASB
Oh,
statements that are coming, and
So
it's crazy because we're up to 101 already.
Yeah.
I have a question about 101, which is compensated absences.
So we're already reporting the common state absence.
And that would be
We did
basically,
101 already, we've been doing that.
okay, but that is reporting when we are paying staff members for paid sick time or paid vacation or paid whatever bereavement, and we have to show that somehow.
It represents the balance of all sick and vacation time that would be due to each employee if they were all to leave on June 30th, 2022. If
So-
everybody was to leave on June 30th, 2022, that's the common state
So it's like the OPEB for the current.
for the current, yeah, yes.
Does anyone have any other questions for Justin?
Well, thank you
All
all.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you having me.
Time tonight.
Yes, I look forward to working with you all in the future, very much so.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Bye,
coming in to
Barry.
join us.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
Man.
Yes, and to echo what Superintendent Walker said earlier, yes. Denise, Barry, we very much appreciate you and your entire team's diligent work to keep us in such great financial order. So, all right. Now we will move into my president's report. So good evening, everyone. Thank you to those of us who are joining us in person and the people who are watching us on live stream. It was wonderful to see so many people at the back to school nights. Thank you to our faculty, staff, and administration in each of our schools for a fantastic introduction to the school year. I'd also like to congratulate and thank our athletics department, our coaches, students, and the incredible and dedicated Booster Club for another wonderful homecoming week. It was so great to see so much of the community throughout the week out supporting our student athletes. Continuing the congratulations, I'd also like to congratulate Dr. Duback and our district administration for being named a 2022 National Blue Ribbon School. And I'd also like to congratulate Kate Bredis on being named a National Merit Semifinalist. So lots of great things going on in the district. And switching gears, I'd like to highlight some of the upcoming events and information from our PTAs. The Harry Chapin Run Against Hunger will be held on Sunday, October 16th here at the high school. And if you are unable to attend on the 16th, you can register to do a virtual walk or run between October 8th and October 15th. From the CET PTA, there will be a principal's coffee on October 12th discussing the new house system. The community will be able to submit questions that will to be addressed there at the principal's coffee through a Google form that'll be sent home this week. The Booth Fest will be held on October 29th at the upper field at CET. This festival will be held from 1 to 4 p.m. and it will include crafts, games, a costume contest, and the not so spooky Boo Trail in the woods. The Fall Scholastic Book Fair is back and it will take place the first week in November. And the gift card fundraiser will also kick off in early November. And from the PVC PTA, Picture Day will be on October 12th. You can pre-order photos now. I think that email was sent out. There will be a principal's coffee talk on October 18th. And Friday Night Stripes will take place on October 21st. Also, the next PVC PTA meeting, which is October 24th, will tentatively be held at Hudson Valley Beta Kitchen on Grand Street with a welcome event following the meeting. CET Picture Day is also October 13th. Just put that in there as well. And then from the high school PTSA, the high school PTSA is encouraging parents, staff, and community to support the community by becoming PTSA members. Membership dues go a long way towards supporting our students. For example, the PTSA is funding an upcoming trip for our English 12 students to the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County. You can find information on their website about membership, and you can also visit them at their booth at Fall Fest on October 8th. The Croton Harmon Special Education PTA is up and running again. In fact, they're holding their first meeting right now over at CET. SEPTA would also like our community to consider becoming members. You can join at their website, which is www.chsepta.org. Right, and lastly, in my report, as many of you know, at our last meeting, the board heard a presentation from the Future Facilities Planning team on a proposed capital project. I would encourage everyone in the community to view that recording and the information regarding the proposed project on the district website. The board is scheduled to vote on a resolution to present the public a referendum for the project at our next meeting, which is on October 20th. We hope that you can join us or watch that meeting, and want to note that if the resolution is approved, a public vote on the referendum will be held on December 13th, 2022. Superintendent Walker will speak further about the proposed capital project during his report, but please be on the lookout for more information from the district in the coming weeks, including opportunities for the community to hear more about the proposed project. Also, the board will have a booth at Fall Fest on Saturday with information regarding the project. So please stop by to say hi, talk to us about that, or talk to us about any other school district matters. We're looking forward to seeing lots of people out there. This concludes my president's report, and we will now open up hearing of the public. Speakers may use the podium to address the board on school district matters. We ask that you state your name and you can provide your email or address on the sign-up sheet. I believe it's outside. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes. So if anyone has anything.
No, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, then I will then turn it over to Superintendent Walker for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Sarah. And as Greg pulls this up, I wanted to echo Sarah's sentiments. Greg and I will sit down before each meeting and go through recent events and find images and think through what it is we want to make sure that we share with the community. And one of the challenges for this meeting was just the sheer amount of fantastic things that are happening made it very difficult to pick only a few and not spend the entire meeting on the superintendent's report. So that is a challenge that any district, I think, would love to have, and speaks to the quality of our schools and our community. But want to begin tonight with the continuation of a program that we began last year called the Tiger Welcome, where we take a few moments to recognize and welcome new members of our faculty and staff. And our first this year is Lainey Oles, and actually this is not as much welcome as welcome back to Lainey. Lainey is an alum of Croton Harmon High School and spent 2 years in leave replacement substitute positions at CET before the board appointed her last spring as a tenure track third grade teacher at CET. Lainey is a fantastic and energetic educator, forms great relationships with the students in her class and their families, and shared with me that in her personal life, when she's not at CET, she enjoys reading a great deal, both mysteries and thrillers. So if you have any good recommendations for Lainey, she's always looking for new book recommendations, and loves being active and spending time with her family. So welcome back to the Tigers, Lainey. Thrilled to have you as part of the team. Additionally, I want to echo Sarah's sentiments. To have a school recognized as a National Blue Ribbon School is a true rarity and a testament to every member of the school district community, particularly when it's the high school, and because that is the culminating educational experience for young people in our community. So first and foremost, we thank and recognize every member of the faculty, staff, student body, and parents at the high school. But truly, this is a pre-K through grade 12 recognition, and a recognition for every part of the school district community. It truly gets no better than this in terms of having our high school recognized on a national level for excellence in supporting all students. We were pleased to be joined last Friday afternoon by Senator Harcum, who shared with us a proclamation from the New York State Senate congratulating Dr. Duback, Sarah, Jen Moore, representing, of course, the Croton Teachers Association, Mr. Maxim, and myself. It's a privilege to have had the chance to stand there among that outstanding group of leaders and accept that recognition. And Jen, Laura, and I look forward to traveling to Washington, D.C. early in November to be part of the national recognition for the outstanding work of this entire community. So congratulations to every Tiger on that recognition. Additionally, CET, as we know, has become their house program, and last Friday was their first flexible Friday of the year, where the schedule was modified and allowed all students and all staff within the building to spend time together within their grades K through 4 houses, beginning to make connections with each other across the school in ways that really wouldn't be possible without this kind of system. There's been some really good energy about this. I will tell you, I was at the last CET PTA meeting, and after the meeting, a couple of parents grabbed me and said, "Steve, we just want to let you know that we feel great about the start of this." And we both have separately, they have children who are in the pre-K program, and both of those really young Tigers have said, "We can't wait to get to CET to be part of a particular house." So it's nice to see that even our really young pre-K Tigers are looking forward to that experience, and go House Honesty. For all my Honesty House members who are out there, looking forward to seeing that house group again soon. Also wanted to give a shout out to the team in the library at PVC as the re-envisioning, kind of long-awaited re-envisioning of the PVC library starts to come to fruition. When you walk in there, it really is just a very different fundamental feeling that you get in the space now, and great pride that the entire team there had in showing Dr. Blair and I around the other day. So we look forward to the final completion of that and really becoming a continued part of the heart of PVC and a truly collaborative and creative learning space for all of our Tiger students there. Also wanted to mention that in this room about 2 weeks ago, a group of about 35 of us, including Molly and Omar and Sarah, representing our team on the board, spent some time facilitated by Judy Wilson in thinking through, arguing through, collaborating through, and arriving at goals and an updated vision statement for the district that, in my opinion, are truly unique, forward-thinking, and position us to be, again, the leaders in the region in terms of where our schools are heading in the next months and years. I'm deeply, deeply proud of the work of that team. We're digitally doing some final wordsmithing on the goal statements as assigned by Judy. I'll admit publicly, I'm a little late, Judy. I'm getting my feedback to the group. So, but our plan is to have members of that team here on October 20th at the work session to share their work and the product as it exists so far. So we look forward to that conversation. Also, as Sarah said, the energy throughout the district during homecoming week was really electric. It was fantastic to see all of our high school students in the same place at the same time in the gym for the pep rally on Friday afternoon. The volleyball competition was intense. They won by the juniors, I believe, right? Class of 24 took that one. So I'm not sure what happened there, seniors, but it was great to see. And the energy at Spencer, some of those nights was just fantastic. So a credit to DJ Goldman, the coaches, the student athletes, the booster club, families. That really was a special week for all of us. And thanks to Croton PD as well for being there to support our student athletes and our coaches during that week. We also now eagerly anticipate the arrival of our first electric school bus, which we anticipate to be here in the middle of the month, right? October 18th, I believe, is the magic date. So, and that is actually the bus right there on the right. It does exist, and so we'll be making its way up here to our community very soon. And so we look forward to sharing information with our community about a kind of a green ribbon cutting event and inaugural ride of our first ESP very soon. And again, great credit to Denise and so many who have been a part of making that happen, and this board, of course, as well, over the course of months and years. We look forward to that next step for us as an entire system. We also celebrated National Custodian Appreciation Day. This gang is the best in the business, right? We know this from having spent time in all of our schools and all of our buildings on Spencer Field. This group is tremendously dedicated, knowledgeable. They care really deeply about every inch of our schools and how it looks, and to make sure that it's safe for all of our students, our staff members, and our visitors. So we give a shout out to Paul and the entire custodial team, and thank you sincerely for all that you do. And I wanted to spend a couple of minutes providing some additional information regarding the future facilities project. So we know we're about 10 weeks, I guess, now out from the date. And so our plan is for the next 10 weeks to blanket the community in communication and information about this. But we want to do it in a thoughtful way that hopefully allows for genuine engagement, for people to take in information in chunks, a little bit at a time, and then to engage with us around questions that information raises. But for folks who are tuning in for the first time, I wanted to just mention that this process really began in earnest last spring with the work around the building condition survey, which is a New York State required process where each building is thoroughly reviewed to determine whether or not there are priority areas within the infrastructure that should be labeled for consideration to be addressed. And through that process, of course, there were areas just simply due to aging within each of our schools, within each of our facilities that were identified. And that work then began in earnest with the formation of the future facilities planning team, which is a group of about 34 or 35 community stakeholders, including members of the Board of Education, Neil and Anna, and led and facilitated by Denise, to look at a project that, in my mind, has three priorities. One is to address those infrastructure areas. The second is to think through how a project like this can help to enhance the future of the experience for our students, our staff, and our community. And the third is to be able to accomplish those first two things in a tax neutral fashion, meaning that our community would not experience any increase in the tax levy as a result of the borrowing associated with the project. And so I will tell you, I'll be very proud to recommend this project to the Board of Education officially for approval on October 20th, and ask that every member of the community mark their calendars for December 13th, pending the board's approval, for a vote on the project as we're viewing it for the Tigers of today and tomorrow. The project really is designed to cover 4 aspects of the experience: 1, infrastructure; 2, teaching and learning; 3, athletics; and 4, the arts, and to find a balance there and a way to impact the student experience, the staff experience, and community experience in all of those areas. And so as we go through the planning process with KG&D, our outstanding architectural partners, we're starting to get to a place where we're able to see some conceptual renderings of what some of these spaces may look like. So these are not actually designed yet specifically for our schools, because what happens is, if the community were to approve the project, the proposition on December 13th, the architects from KG&D would of course then spend the next 3 months or so working directly with our faculty, with our staff, with our team, to specifically design, to co-create these spaces. They then return to the laboratory, so to speak, if they're firm for a couple months, and the plan would be that by the end of this school year in June, they come back, they then circle back with the faculty, with the staff, and unveil what it is that the faculty has been a part of co-creating. But that is an example for conceptual purposes of what hopefully we're able to get the community to start to envision what it might look like when we use the term innovative learning center. And that would be at the high school. So where there are now 5 or 6 separate siloed classrooms, as Dr. Duback has shared previously, we're talking about a much more open, collaborative, creative, inviting learning space. This is a conceptual rendering of what the upgrades at the Spencer Field Sports Complex would look like. Again, not necessarily completely and fully rendered yet, but what you see there, of course, is an artificial turf field, new track, new bleachers, press box, lights, and a concession and restroom area, as well as additional parking and access to the field itself. This is an example of what a renovated music suite might look like in our space. And we look forward to the opportunity over the next few weeks to host members of the community for building tours, to see what these spaces currently look like, including the music space. And it is phenomenal what our music faculty and students are able to produce in a space that is not nearly the kind of quality that we're envisioning here. And finally, this is a rendering of what the amphitheater, outdoor performance, outdoor learning space at CET might look like. So if you can envision the kindergarten hallway and the windows that look out over that current space, I'm sure you would agree this would be a significant enhancement in terms of the experience for what outdoor learning could look like, not only for our students at CET, but we envision for our performing arts oriented students at PVC, the high school, and perhaps the community as well. And so just wanted to share that again over the upcoming 9 weeks or so. We'll be regularly updating our future facilities plan web page on our homepage, creating and then regularly updating an online question and answer document. So to the extent that folks continue to have questions, please make sure you're reaching out to us, because in addition to responding to the individual asker of the question, we'll then take those questions and add them to the public facing Q&A document. Community update emails, including one that will go out tomorrow. So you have some light reading for the 3-day weekend. Hard copy flyers and posters, as Sarah mentioned earlier, they'll be available throughout the community, including at Fall Fest this weekend. A hard copy community newsletter that's being worked on. We'll be scheduling tours of the schools in Spencer Field, as well as more superintendent's video updates. Greg always enjoys gritting his teeth as I go through those. And community office hours that we started last spring, opportunities for folks to stop into the district office to spend time with me, with Denise as well, if she's available. And frankly, if folks don't want to come into district office, but would rather have me meet them somewhere for a cup of coffee and talk about the project, I'm happy to do that too. So looking forward to a lot of really great discussion about this project and what it could do for our students, staff, and community in the weeks to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Walker. I will now turn it over to Molly Levitt to give our ex officio member report.
Okay, it's been a very eventful, okay, it's on me, that's unyielding stare. I'll grab it. Yeah, so it's been a very eventful last few weeks. My last student report was basically just about the first day of school, so I'm happy that there's a lot more to report. I'm going to start off with Student Faculty Congress, which I'm also a representative on. So for the uninitiated, the freshman elections, they obviously can't happen in the spring before the school year like the rest of the elections do. So we had the 9th grade elections towards the beginning of September, and then they were here for our first G-Day meeting, which was really exciting. We were talking about connections and just different ways that SFC can work with different parts of the school community. And we were talking about things we were involved in and outside the school. And there are a lot of great ideas being passed around. And I thought the energy was great. And I thought it was a great way to start off the school year. We're also having our retreat next Friday, October 14th, which is really exciting. We also, on September 23rd, we had the club fair. And again, I think that went really well. It was so nice to see what everyone was passionate about. And in my unbiased opinion, I think the Model UN booth was a hit. But yeah, even I, as a senior, I was going around and I was looking at different booths and I even joined a couple clubs. So it just felt, it was, not to repeat myself, but great energy. Also, on the topic of extracurriculars, the musical auditions happened and we just started rehearsals last week. We are prepping for the musical in November. I believe our first performance is the 18th. I think we also have a senior performance on the 17th. It is, wait for it, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. That is the name. It's more exciting than the name makes it sound, I swear. It's going to be really fun. I think everyone should try to go if they can. It's going to be great. We have a great cast. I'm really excited for it. So homecoming week and spirit week, they were the same week. I know Mr. Walker touched on this too, and so did Ms. Carrier. And they were both great. I went to a lot of the games, as many as I can. All the teams played great. It was a great energy. Shout out to DJ and to the Booster Club for helping bring the schools together under the lights. That's always such a great experience. And Spirit Week was also a really great way for the high school to come together, especially after the last couple of years. We had a couple theme days. We had Decade Day. My personal favorite was Adam Sandler Day. And at the end of the week, also on September 23rd, we had the pep rally, and that went great. And unfortunately, the seniors did lose, but it was a very close match in the volleyball tournament. We had the student announcers, and we had our student reps, and we also had the band playing, which is always a treat. And like I said, and like has been touched, has been mentioned before, but that back to school night for CHHS was on September 28th. And from what I've heard from my mom, that went well. And finally, I am going to talk about my experience a little bit. As Mr. Walker mentioned, I was on the strategic planning committee, and it was a great experience. I was there along with 2 other student representatives who are also seniors, Nicole Caguano and Hannah Reynes. And it was a great energy. It was a great experience. It was 2 days. I totally was not excited to be missing class. We took expertise. We took from a lot of different resources, and we looked at feedback from students, parents, and faculty, which was really good. It felt sorry. I think I learned a lot through the process, and it was a really collaborative environment, and I think everyone felt like they were able to have their voice heard. And we worked on the new mission and vision statement for the district. We worked on the goals, and we worked on the new portrait of a learner, which is going to replace the profile of a graduate. And the work for that is not done, but I was very happy for the part that I've been able to play in it. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Molly.
Thank you.
I just want to add, Molly, that I really appreciate that Adam Sandler continues to be appreciated by. Please,
Multi-generational.
yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Molly. It's exciting to hear about all the great stuff going on in the high school. We will now move over to new business. So 3.1, the Advocacy Committee is requesting board discussion on several NISBA resolutions. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Obermeyer, who is our Advocacy Chair, to take us through the work that we did on the committee and things to talk about tonight.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So I just wanted to start off with just explaining what this NISBA resolutions process is. I know I'm new to it, and I know colleagues here are new board members. So just wanted to kind of give you a brief understanding of where they come from and how they move forward. So in the summer, before July 31st, ahead of the NISBA, which is the New York State School Boards Association for the public, before their annual business meeting, which is on October 17th of this year, local school boards and the New York State School Board Association's Board of Directors submit different proposed resolutions to NISBA. Regarding potential positions, they would like NISBA delegates to consider. Position statements, if adopted, direct NISBA to advocate either for or against a wide variety of legislative and regulatory issues at both the state and federal levels. And also to affect change of the NISBA bylaws or procedures. So NISBA takes all these resolutions, and then what they do is they review them amongst their board. And then they compile a list of proposed resolutions recommended for adoption, and a list of proposed resolutions not recommended for adoption. So this year, there were 43 total proposed resolutions from the local school boards and from their board of directors. NISBA recommended 32 to be adopted and 11 to not be adopted. Small note, 2 of those 32 to be adopted were written by Neil. So that's excellent. What the,
Well, I just went, written by me and approved by the board.
there you go. Okay. Collaborative. So NISBA will make those recommendations. And then the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association, do I have that right?
Yep.
WPSBA, invites the school board members to review those proposed resolutions and then determine if they support NISBA's recommendations or if they oppose NISBA's recommendations, or if they could not come to a decision at the meeting. Okay, so we have the NISBA, they recommend or not recommend, and then Westchester Putnam decides if they agree with that or not. After that, those are given to our local school district. Process is then to meet in the Advocacy Committee. And we review the 43 proposed resolutions, every single one of them, I will say, to determine if all 3 of us, advocacy members, me, Neil, and Sarah, agree with NISBA and Westput's recommendations, or sorry, not Westput, right? Is it Westput? Yeah, you can call it, okay. If we agree with their recommendations or whether there is not agreement amongst us, such that the resolution needs to be brought before the full Board of Education for discussion. So that's what we're going to be talking about here tonight. Just so you know what happens later on is the resolutions are reviewed at the October Business Board meeting in our district here today. That's done differently in different districts, but that's what we do. After hearing NISBA's recommendation, Westput's recommendations, the local board members' recommendations and feedback from our local board, one representative from our board will go to the NISBA annual business meeting and act as a delegate, where these resolutions are introduced and put forth to a vote. So at that time, resolutions that are approved become the position statements that direct NISBA to advocate either for or against, again, with a wide variety of legislative and regulatory issues at both the state and federal levels, or to affect change in NISBA's bylaws. Once adopted, each position remains a formal position for 5 years unless it is rescinded or the action the position calls for is accomplished. Okay, So given all that,
Before,
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one other thing, which was, there are certain ones that, as Mary said, we will not, we did not come into unanimous agreement or felt it was appropriate for board discussion. But if there's any other resolution that's not listed here for discussion, that someone else wants to discuss,
By all means.
by all means, bring it up and we'll discuss it.
And Neil, could you say, and Mary, the process for agreeing or not agreeing on things to recommend is through a unanimous decision from the committee?
Right, so that's how we handle it, is that if the committee comes to a consensus, we will recommend that the board support or not support, and then we will, then we would direct, and if this year it's Neil, who's the delegate, to either vote in support when that resolution is put forth or not,
Depending on what.
depending on what we,
what-
yeah,
what-
so.
what the
So we try
collective
to,
wants.
we, the advocacy committee tries to sort of do the legwork of looking at every single resolution and presenting recommendations to the full board. And then where we can't come to a consensus, we want to bring it back to everybody. So those are the ones that Mary will discuss tonight, or the ones where we could come to a consensus.
right, so just to touch on that, so again, NISBA recommends, or it does not recommend. What NISBA did not recommend out of those 43, Westput agreed with not recommending them, and then all of the three of us also recommended opposing those. So that's resolutions 33 to 43 in the link that Sarah provided with the full list of resolutions. For the NISBA recommended resolutions, again, Westput either agreed, recommended agreeing, or opposing. Our board agreed with what Westput opposed. So there were resolutions 1, 9, 15, 16, and 20. Westput opposed, even though NISBA supported, and we agreed with Westput on those. So we can review those if anybody has a different opinion about those, but we are in agreement with Westput on that. And will not be recommending those at the meeting.
And will you be providing today kind of the rationalization for the not supporting?
If you would like us to,
Yeah.
we can go through each of those. Yeah.
So do you guys have those up? By any chance, Neil?
One, so
Okay.
did you want me to read the first
they're
one?
up here. Okay, just before we go, so that was 1, 9, 15, 16, and 20. Again, we were in agreement there, but we can go over that. Resolution 8 was one where amongst the three of us, we did not come to agreement, so we definitely wanted to talk about that one.
Hold on, you said that you all agreed on 9, 16.
So one, we
had
agreed with Westput's
Oh, I see.
recommendation to
opposed.
not to oppose
Right, okay.
those
okay,
resolutions, even though they were recommended by NISBA.
Right.
And what Phil had just asked is if we could provide a brief explanation as to
Yes.
As to why
why
we,
NISBA, why Westput and we do not agree with what was proposed by the NISBA Resolutions Committee. So that's, I guess, what we'll do now.
Can I answer? Am I allowed to hand something out? I don't know. I've never tried.
Sure.
It's just, it's actually a little matrix of what we supported and what we didn't, so if you want to just pass that down.
Yeah.
1, 9, 15.
Yeah.
They got everything.
Yeah, I can give it to you to put in the minutes, Tracy.
Sure.
Okay, I didn't know.
so did you want to go over the
Yeah, I
one,
just want to just
1,
give
9?
the overview of what we're doing.
Perfect.
So, so again, if you look at this, NISBA recommends, doesn't recommend, and Westput either agrees with or opposes what they recommend. And so the 2 in yellow are the resolutions, again, that we supported, with Westput opposing. And then the green, all of the resolutions, NISBA recommended, Westput agreed with, and our board agreed, so we don't have to talk about those. But the 2 in red are also ones where we, our board did not come to a consensus. So for resolution 8, resolution 27, 31, and 32. We're definitely going to be going over, and then those other ones in yellow if desired. So we can start wherever.
So if you want to go over the, did you want me to speak to
Yeah,
sort
why
of
don't
the
you go
rationale
ahead?
on 1, 9, 15, and 16? So
Sure.
we can go over one. I'm sorry, to just trying to go between different things. Okay, so the first resolution is that the New York State School Boards Association supports adding fully state-funded arts and music education as a common school branch that should be incorporated into public school curriculum to provide a more well-rounded education for children. Now, we fully, I mean, as we had spoke when people spoke at West Putt and also as we spoke as a board, right? We fully support arts and music education. But the discussion at the West Putt was focused on the trade-off between a curricular mandate and the positive of requiring that mandate to be fully funded. And we felt, and I think we felt as a committee, that the downside of that curricular mandate and it not really, and it being very vague as to what that mandate would be, and how it would be measured, offset the benefit of pushing for a fully funded mandated curriculum.
Incrementally funded.
Well, we don't know. And
Well, and that's the thing. It doesn't say that either. It doesn't say incrementally funded. So it's,
This is a
you're-
very terse.
right. And it also,
Resolution.
and also, let me have my concern with this, in addition to what Sarah talked about, is if it is going to be a common school branch, i.e. like math, science, and so on, then we're talking about assessment. We're talking about expecting the state to come forth with assessment for arts and music as part of that common school branch, and that would create other issues for students and staff in having to deal with assessment. It's just too vague and too broad for us to feel that we can support it.
I feel this was on the roster from last year. as
Yeah, it
well.
was.
yeah, I believe it was.
It was worded differently. But it was, we had the same discussion.
So the next one up would then, does anybody have any, I'm sorry, does anybody have any questions, additional questions or thoughts regarding that? Okay, so then the next one is 9. And that is that the New York State School Boards Association shall petition the New York State Education Department and the commissioner thereof to include as a mandatory prerequisite to being employed by a school district in the state of New York as a licensed security guard, that said individual receives as part of their training and licensure a separate and specific credential signifying training and knowledge of the laws, rules, and regulations applicable to schools. So again, I think our opposition on this was partially to do with the somewhat interesting wording of this resolution, in that it wasn't clear what that training, would be, and whether that additional training was necessary to what is already being provided. But also the part that says the training and knowledge of the laws, rules, and regulations applicable to schools. This is an incredibly broad statement, right? Like if a security guard needs to understand all of the education laws of the state of New York, that becomes a particularly onerous and probably not particularly practical thing for training needed for a security guard. So that was sort of the basis of our opposing this.
And
Did you
yeah, I
have
just want to add that as part of that, at least our consideration was that to the extent there are laws, rules, and regulations applicable to schools that may even come up in disciplinary issues, such as a student who is classified, has certain, the district has to deal with their behavioral issues in a certain manner consistent with the IDEA, but we're not going to expect the security guard to know what is involved in a manifestation determination, et cetera. And so it's to teach, the folks who are performing those security functions to know that, as this says, is overbroad. And I don't think that the people who prepared this and their rationale is related to security, and school shootings, which is something we were all concerned about, really thought about how this was going to affect what we are, what they're going to do and what the training is going to be. So, and they talk about their rationale was that the Board of Education believes that knowledge of means, tactics, and manner of providing security services specific to the unique needs and environment within a school district and the facilities is equally important to promote safe schools. Well, that's fine, but that's not all the laws, regulations, and policies and rules applicable to schools. So that's why we came out the way we did.
It's a lack of specificity.
Yes.
And overbroad.
I think I agree, and I think I agree because there's nothing with the current state of affairs which does not allow us as a school district to apply whatever prerequisites we choose to whoever we hire as a security guard in our school. We can have our own, we don't need New York State, we don't need New York State to mandate this. We can mandate it ourselves as a matter, and I don't think it even requires policy. I think we can do it as a matter of procedure.
Well, it would basically be in the RFP for the security service, and we would say you would have to provide, evidence
Yeah, and
that people you're assigned to us have this knowledge and training or credential, whatever you want to call
Just
it.
as we expect them to not, anybody we hire to understand the code of conduct.
Any other comments on 9?
No.
All right, so 15, that the New York State School Boards Association supports the adoption of legislation which would require the New York State Education Department to develop regulations providing oversight over special education parent and rules of conduct and enforcement procedures for same. So our issue here is that in the way that it was written, it appears as though they're looking for there to be oversight over the special education parent advocate and rules of conduct and enforcement. Would seem to suggest that they were looking for maybe like a professional advocate,
Right.
which is something that we had great concerns about, right? The parents are not, in many cases, would not be able to afford a professional advocate to come to these meetings. And we didn't feel that it was appropriate to create a situation where that may become necessary and put additional burden on those parents.
And I would add on that this resolution was brought up in prior years, 2021 or previously, and brought up where the school board in question raised an issue about particularly, I'll call it, argumentative and oppositional non-professional representatives, which that school district wanted to, in essence, control, or I guess control is the right word. And, advocacy by an attorney is governed by certain rules of conduct, but advocacy by a parent, you don't really get that same training. It's very hard to say, no, you're stepping out of line, parent advocate. So now we want you to just kind of get out of here, and then the parent will not have the representation. It's so difficult to administer that we felt it was not appropriate, and it's not appropriate to say, if you're going to be a parent advocate, you've got to get a credential, because that's, and so that's how we came to where we concluded on that.
All right, we'll move on to 16. Yep.
16.
Bring me else, the screen's clear, sorry, my eyes are getting bad. Resolved that the New York State School Boards Association supports legislation at the state level that would allow for school board members to receive a stipend for their work as a trustee. Now, there was actually quite a bit of discussion about this at the West Putt Advocacy meeting, and there were good points brought up about valuing the time and the commitment that is put in by people, and also that it could open up the pool of candidates of who might decide to run for the Board of Education if there was a stipend that might allow them to provide for childcare, to meet other needs in order to devote this time to it. But on the balance, we really felt as a board, as the advocacy committee, that the money that is in the budget should be spent on students, and no portion of that should really be spent on providing a stipend for board members. So it's really just kind of as simple as it was. It just really didn't feel like it was appropriate.
So, and and those are mentioned as well as the ones we'll talk about, because if there are people or members of the board who have a different take on it, feel free to bring it up.
Absolutely.
I agree with your rationale.
All right. And then,
I agree with I understand their rationale and it does make sense, but I think that it potentially opens up another can of worms, and therefore I'd rather stay away from it.
all right. And then the last one is 20. That the New York State School Boards Association support legislation at the state and or federal level that would reform the current gun laws to strengthen background checks, implementing red flag laws, as well as laws that will restrict guns from those under the age of 21. While I have very strong personal feelings about gun control, I think it was the consensus of our advocacy committee that this was not, that it wasn't an appropriate resolution for the school board and for a school boards association to advocate for. It seemed too broad of an issue for advocacy at a school board level, because it was not strictly a school issue. It is a much broader issue than just in our schools.
Two things. First, the West Putt Legislative Advocacy Committee came to no decision, because some people felt this was important for schools and school safety, and others felt, as Sarah described, that this really was something that was kind of outside our bailiwick. You will note that number 33 and 34 talk about single payer health plan, which obviously may affect students. Actually, 33 doesn't. 34 talks about child health care, federal programs or state programs, was opposed by NYSBA because they said, this is maybe a great thing, but it's really outside of our bailiwick. And so our feeling was that number 20, however we may feel about the substance, is outside of our bailiwick as a school board or a school board association. However, we are open to thoughts.
Right. Well, I'm not sure I completely agree that that it would be completely outside of our lane, given, events that have happened in schools. I think that what we've been talking about as far as specificity or lack of specificity does apply here, right? Because it kind of is pretty general in saying supporting federal or state laws, red flag laws, et cetera. But who knows what kind of piece of legislation will come to the table, and kind of providing a general statement like that is it's just too broad, right? But I will say personally that I think that there is a lot to discuss here, and if there were more specificity, I think that there's definitely a way in which our schools, our board, et cetera, should really think about this as something that we take on if there is more specificity.
And it was certainly something that the three of us discussed for a while, and that was a lengthy topic of conversation at West Button. Like I said, they were really unable to come to a consensus either, so.
We talked about,
No,
we talked about this last year in advocacy, because I did think that it was a role of the advocacy committee to come out in support of legislation like the language proposed here. I agree that it's not specific. At the time, Neil and I had a conversation about whether it was kind of like in our bailiwick, as you like to say. I do believe it is, but I think that at the time we thought it was too politicized. Am I wrong in remembering it that way?
That's correct. I think we brought it, if I remember correctly, we brought it to the board and. the
I don't
board-
think we brought it to the board. I don't think it left committee. Do you remember? You were
I
there.
don't think we brought it to the.
No,
Okay.
but I would like to see, just, I mean, on the record, us having more discussions about using advocacy to impact legislation at the state level this way.
Yeah, I agree.
Not just regarding this, but just part of your advocacy.
Right, so if the consensus is that we will direct whoever, probably me, to vote no on number 20, I will take that. Take the
Is
guidance.
there any, just a process thing is when you submit votes, or is there an opportunity to talk about the why or?
At the business meeting?
Yeah,
Yes, with
like,
every.
so that they get the feedback around the.
Yes.
specificity,
The issue at the resolutions, the business meeting works that they will begin discussion and they will give like 10 minutes to every resolution. And with 3 minutes, your yes and then a no, and then a yes and then a no. And then if the 10 minutes run and the clock keeps running, it's sort of like soccer, they don't stop the timeout. And then you get, the bell rings, then they have to have a motion to extend time for another 5 minutes or whatever, and then you go through that process. So people can speak and people can make amendments to resolutions. However, when it's not in person, this will be, I assume, not in person, you got to get your amendments in ahead of time. So there is the opportunity for discussion, and I will say that as a delegate of schools, if there are, and this happened to me in a couple of occasions, situations where we've heard that discussion and it has convinced me, or it has convinced, people representing other boards to change the position they came in with, they'll do that. I've done that on a couple of occasions when people give an explanation or compelling reasons that we had not considered.
Right. Well, if there are no other conversations on those, then we will move on
I think
to.
we ought to have we might want to have a thumbs up, thumbs down on this one.
Sure, on these,
On this specific-
on
on
20.
resolution, specifically on resolution.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not really hearing consensus here.
So I guess the question would be, if you put, to make it easy, if you put your thumb up, you want to vote yes
Yeah.
on resolution 20.
Yes.
And if you put your thumb down, you want the direction to be to vote no on resolution 20. Okay.
All right, so thumbs up.
I can't see thumbs.
Josh, Theo,
For 20,
Anna, for 20.
Wait, who's thumbs up?
Josh.
we're doing
Okay,
just.
Do
thumbs
do
up.
thumbs
Yeah,
up
just
right
do
now.
thumbs up.
Josh,
Actually, Molly has a
Theo.
procedural question. This is
Yeah.
not a good question, because this is not a binding action of the board.
No.
Yeah.
that was Molly's question.
Does she get a thumbs up?
Oh,
I don't think
so.
She's a non-voting member.
Right. This is
Sorry.
a vote.
Okay.
I know, I was like.
But if you like-
I was gonna say, feel free to
Oh.
talk to us about it before we do thumbs up.
Or if you want the record to reflect that you had a thumbs up or a thumbs down, this is the time at which you can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say that personally, I'd have thumbs up. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I mean, this is what I've lived with. I'm right around the age of the kids who were killed at Sandy Hook. So it's just been something that I've grown up with. I remember seeing it on the news, and it's something that students are thinking about a lot. And it's just about school safety and kids feeling safe at school. So I would support it.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Now, let me just to respond, Molly, I appreciate what you've said, and I certainly hope, and I think we as a board would be supportive of activity and activism by students on this subject. And I know as we have in the past, so, certainly, we're not opposed to what the resolution seeks to accomplish, but it's the question as to whether a school board, in my view, should be the engine that is doing that, the school board association, as opposed to other advocates. But, I appreciate what you said.
Thank you.
Okay, so Josh, Anna,
Well, let's do it again.
Yes, thumbs up. Josh, Anna. Yeah,
3.
And then,
sort of sticking with my initial. It was very difficult for me to sort of get to. Can you hand me the water, please? Sure. Thank you. All right, so then thumbs down. Okay. All right, thank you very much for that. And trust me, it's, like I said, it's a difficult issue and one that we all want to see. We want to make sure our kids are safe. when
There's
they
no
go
other
to school.
question. Sorry, I'm sorry. No, when you're done.
No, I'm just saying,
Well,
we all want to
this
make
is the other
sure
question.
our
This
kids
is the
are
other
safe
question.
when they go into schools.
So I think we all are in agreement that there needs to be something needs to be done. I think the disagreement is on the wording of this specific
Mhm.
proposition.
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity to think through a different proposition that tries to get to the gist of the issue, or again, try to convey the concern, the real concern that exists out there in better wording? I'm looking at Neil specifically.
No, when are amendments due in by?
there are two answers. Number one, amendments are due like,
This week.
like this week.
Yeah,
Secondly, the issue of if you will, a resolution that is a sense of the body is not what these resolutions are about, because the resolutions are for the purpose of directing the staff of NISBA
To lobby.
to advocate. Right, so there might be something that could be crafted in such a way that, can do that and give them direction. But a resolution more generally is something that we could do as a board. Okay, in 2017, February, Josh will remember this, we adopted a resolution on immigration and on the issues about basically Muslim immigration restrictions that had been imposed by the federal government in early 2017, and what we would do as a board to address those, and what we would, and we adopted that because that really kind of fit in with what we would do. We could do that as well with regard to these subjects. Student faculty Congress could do something to indicate the sense of the students and the belief of the students about these subjects. We could say that as well, but in terms of our governance, we have to have a line, know carefully that our line is governing. And so what we do as individuals, what we even do as a board, that might be something we could do for next year. It's something, we could certainly consider, but can't, we're not gonna be able to, by the end of this week or whatever it is, refine this. And you may well find with something like this, that like in the end, it will pass. Because there were a lot of boards probably feel the way, those in NISBA who were in favor of, at West Platte, and we'll see. So,
I think, I agree that it's too short a timeline for this week, but it does feel like we should continue the conversation as a board.
Absolutely. Mary, I'll turn it back over to you for the other resolutions that we wanted to.
Okay. So we're gonna start with resolution 8, which, just to highlight, NISBA recommended this resolution. West Platte opposed it, and then our board was not able to reach consensus. So,
Did we know the rationale for why West Platte opposed it?
Yeah, hold on, I can tell you right there. So did you want me to
Yeah,
read
why
out
don't
I'm sorry, the New York State School Boards Association supports universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds statewide. The rationale at West Platte was that there was opposition. They opposed a mandate for a district provided pre-kindergarten. Basically opposing that mandate, that without an equal sort of incremental funding
I
measure,
see.
as well. While resolution 28, which also has to do with pre-K, is to ensure that funding is available for a quality program, was supported. So so West Platte and NISBA both supported 28, as did.
So they didn't
our
want to
advocacy
allow
committee?
for an unfunded mandate.
Correct.
I get it.
Okay.
So yeah, so 8 was, so that is the resolution, and as Mary said, our committee was unable to come to consensus, I think mainly because of me. Because I will say, I do feel that, to me, first off, this is one where it's written in a broad enough manner that it actually does give some flexibility, I think, to NISBA versus it being so overly broad that it is, isn't practical or useful. I think this, to me, the way I read this, does not say that it is a mandate.
It's saying supports it.
It's saying that it supports it, and I very much support the idea of universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds. So I was very much pushing in the support line. But and Mary, you can discuss.
Well, it was just that word support. I think that the West Platte folks had really seen that as a mandate, so I think that's where we were being influenced about that. We certainly wanted to just bring it to the board to see what the board thinks. Certainly supported as well, so.
Well, I would be in support of this, just in terms of what the actual vehicle is, which is a NISBA resolution, which allows them to then go and lobby. I think it's a very strong principle. I mean, it's kind of inarguable that 3 and 4-year-olds having successful preschool or pre-kindergarten experiences sets them up for success along their entire student career. So I would be in support of this. I would be in support of NISBA being empowered with this, to use this as a lobbying vehicle.
My concern with it is, once again, it's cursory and vague statement. Supporting the concept of universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds. First, I don't think we have established universal pre-K responsibilities for 3-year-olds. Even in New York City, which is moved towards universal pre-K. We're not, that's for 4-year-olds, I believe, but even if it's for 3 and 4, the question of what does universal pre-K mean? Actually, when we were talking about this, I came across a regulation from the state ed regulation that talks about universal pre-K, but I don't know what universal pre-K means exactly. And this doesn't talk about that in a way that we would be giving a meaningful directive to NISBA to advocate for something that we can live with. Because if it is, Okay, universal pre-K, 3 and 4. You know what? You don't get any more money. Figure out where you're gonna get that from, but you're now responsible for 3 to 21 instead of 6 to 21, right? And, now we're in a whole different world, and that's why I did not support this.
Okay, I heard your thoughts.
I-
Josh?
See, I have to take this together with the other items that are already inside of NISBA's lobbying positions. And NISBA has already has consistently been strong in opposition to unfunded mandates. And I think taking this together with NISBA's, taking this on its own, yes, I agree, I would have that concern. But taking it in concert with NISBA's longstanding opposition to unfunded mandates, I think I'd be accepted in its current form. But I agree, if it were just standing on its own, then yes, I would agree with you, but given the general stance of NISBA concerning funding and mandates, I'm more comfortable with it.
Any other thoughts? I'll do a thumbs up, thumbs down,
So thumbs up
thumbs up, support.
supports the resolution,
Supports the
thumbs down opposes the resolution.
It's Anna, me,
Okay.
Theo, Josh, and Omar, and Mary. Were you thumbs up?
Everyone.
No,
Except for Neil.
Oh, sorry, Neil.
okay,
All right.
so I am directed, or Sarah in my absence is directed to vote yes.
How's that gonna feel? I'm just kidding.
How you gonna feel?
I'm just kidding.
It's gonna feel fine.
All right.
9:30, that's
All right.
Okay. All right, so the next three resolutions, NISBA recommended, West Putt agreed with, and our board did not reach consensus.
When you say our board, you mean our committee.
I'm sorry, our committee, not our board, that's what we're here to discuss tonight. All three resolutions, 27, 31, and 32 have to do with charter schools. And so I can just start off because I was one of the dissenting, or the dissenting, I guess. First in here, let me just give you a brief overview in case you haven't read it, but number 27, NISBA supports legislation that would require local school district consent for new charter school applications in districts with a large percentage of charter students. So basically, local school district consent of approval. 31 is NISBA opposes legislation expanding New York State's charter school laws. And 32 is NISBA supports legislative changes that reduce the impact of New York State's charter schools on traditional districts. So I have to say, at the Advocacy Committee meeting, I was actually surprised by these. And upon leaving that meeting, I went and really investigated charter schools and why these might be resolutions actually on these suggestions. And it was really interesting to see what's going on out there with charter schools. But my reasoning is I wouldn't want to support, and I would hope our board would not support legislation that either caps or limits or cripples charter school expansion. On the whole, there's good charter schools, there's bad charter schools, there's good public schools, there's bad public schools, right? Nothing's perfect, but on the whole, charter schools have decisively better education outcomes in some particular neighborhoods for students, particularly in low-income minority communities, where a good education is critical to a better life and a ticket out of poverty. So I can open it up. I mean, in a district where I know equity is valued, and we talk a lot about it. We've been asked for a year to think about what we can do to influence, using our sphere of influence to promote equity, and I've really taken that to heart. I looked up the equity definition in NISBA's actually recommended policy, just to refresh myself on how they define it, and it's, this is in NISBA's equity policy that they suggested boards adopt, is that educational equity is based on the principles of fairness and ensuring that every student has access to the resources and educational rigor that they need for their education. It's not the same as equality, which is treating all children the same. And it recognizes that not everyone starts at the same place or has the same needs. So the support one student needs may be very different than another. So when I look at charter schools and I look what's going on with the educational outcomes for those children, again, particularly in the low income minority communities where charter schools exist, decisively a strong education. So, open up for anybody that would like to.
Yeah, I think we should discuss each of these separately, but to start off with number 27, which says supports legislation that will require local school district consent for new charter school applications in districts with a large percentage of charter students. This resolution was submitted by the Albany City Schools District and the Buffalo City School District. In their situations, what happens is that when a charter, well, I want to go back to say not their situations, yeah. A charter school is funded by a contribution, mandatory contribution to that charter school from the district of the student, where the student comes from, equal to the tuition rate, 14,000 or 24,000, whatever that number is. That money is directly transferred from the public school coffers, from our money to the charter school, and charter schools are chartered in New York State, either by the State Education Department or the State University of New York, based on applications that they receive, and they determine whether the aims of the charter school and the financial projections and whatever of the charter school is, in their mind, satisfactory. The problem is that when that occurs, that money is taken away from the district, which is going to have many of the same fixed costs that it will have to support the students who are enrolled in public school. And there is no way other than taxing or reducing expenditures for those districts to balance their budget. The NISBA resolution states that, for example, the rationale, 22% of Albany K-12 students are enrolled in public funded schools in 2021-22 attended charters. But SUNY has approved more charter expansion for 22-23. The district, Albany, will send $37 million to charters in 22-23, which has grown the last year by 2.5 million. So when we're talking about our own budget, and you think about that, charter is done, and then we've got a budget that we are working on, and now we are told, if we were that district, you're going to send money to this charter school. We still have to run our schools.
But
And-
Neil, just to be clear, that's a per pupil
Right.
expenditure, right?
Mhm.
Like
So
that, it's not necessarily going to the district, it's just going directly to, it's following the student to the.
right,
To the charter school.
but our school will still have the same responsibility to run our facility. And my example is,
Except you don't have the students there.
except you
But
don't
still
have the
the
students,
facility.
but you
Correct,
have
you
the
have a facility,
facility
yeah.
and you have the personnel costs.
Mhm.
If, for example, a charter school, a K-4 charter school were to open,
Mhm.
and 10% of our students from CET were to go to that charter school, just take that as an example, we would then be saying, we still have to run CET, we still have to heat it, we still have to do everything, we have to provide the busing, and we are now gonna have 10% fewer students in the grade. Not enough to cut a teacher. We can't cut a teacher unless we are going to increase our class size. We can't have the same facilities, if it's a high school, the same things that we do here, if we don't have that money. So
But, you know, that's-
now, let me just point out, my concern is, and what this resolution 27 says, if my district, Albany, is already sending 22% of the taxes that are raised to go to charter schools, and therefore I need to run our district and all of our facilities and buildings and, you know, all that other stuff with 78% of the money, I am putting the 78% in a hole. And what they're saying is, in 27, we're not saying no charter schools. I can have my opinion on it. They're saying if there is such a great impact of such a large percentage in a particular district, whether it is Albany or Buffalo or Poughkeepsie or some other districts where this happens, they should have some relief. They should be able to say, if I'm going to be doing this, and if a charter school is going to provide a benefit to our students, fine, let me be part of the decision process, says the Albany and Buffalo district, as opposed to having outside people who don't care about what I just said, or may not care, SUNY and state ed, making the decision and foisting that on those districts.
So what do you think the local school district's gonna say?
So,
I mean, are they gonna approve it ever? No,
But
to your point, no, right?
but the
It's
point
basically
is,
saying do not expand.
so, and actually,
If
if
it
you look
meets
at the,
need.
if you look at the rationale in there, it actually discusses state charter school law, which does say that, you know, that I don't want to read this entire thing, but basically the law recognizes that school districts where the charter school would be located should be able to have some decision-making, some consent in that process, but it is not, it's, the law recognizes that, but it's not actually done in practice. And so you are creating a hardship for districts that do have a high percentage of charter schools, in that you're creating a burden for that, an additional burden for them and for the students in those schools.
Who already have a burden though of not learning. I mean, charter schools are a choice.
But
right?
that's so.
People choose to go there, so. the
But-
fact that
As a matter of
22%,
philosophy, right, we are a public school, and as a
So are
public
charter
school
schools.
trustee,
So are.
they are publicly funded. They are not public,
schools.
they are publicly funded.
Yes.
They're publicly
schools.
funded, but we have no ability as a public school district to have any effect on what happens in those schools. Even with the Board of Regents consideration of having review and of private schools, yeshivas and other private schools, to make sure that there is educational equivalency. We, as the public school district in which those schools are located, have no role in seeing whether the charter school that is located in that district is performing the function with our money.
But that's by design, Neil, because, you know, we
No,
can use us as
no,
an
that's-
example. This is in communities where, you know, literacy and mathematics are in the low 20%.
But how does this process of creating charter schools advance the performance for the majority of students
Yeah.
who are in
Mhm.
the public schools
Mhm.
for which the public
Yeah.
school boards have
So there's
responsibility.
actually evidence that where charter schools open up, it actually raises the academic performance of the public schools located in those same areas. So though you talk about funding, if we talk about educational outcomes, right?
Mhm.
That's really what we should be talking about mostly, because the funding, that's an institutional problem, right? That's what we want to get away from. We want to think about what's best for these kids. What's best for them is to get a good education, right? If now a school is strapped because 22% of their kids are leaving, choosing to leave, like, that's something that institution needs to figure out, right? And public education needs to figure out. Josh?
A couple of things. First of all, I would really like to see a reference on that.
Sure.
For
Yeah,
that, for
I
that,
have tons of it.
for that.
Mhm.
One of the things that I'm really concerned about is how charter schools spend their money. I'm really concerned that the level of executive compensation at charter schools is consistently higher than the level of compensation for executives and administrators in public schools. That does not strike me as effective use of public funds, number one.
Does it depend on if they're educating the students best?
I'm also not
That's what we-
convinced that the charter schools are actually effectively educating all of the students that attend them.
Mhm.
Because charter schools there has been significant writing about charter schools achieving high, quote, success rates by counseling out students that are not performing well.
Or only admitting students that.
Or only admitting students that are already performing well.
Well,
And
it's also
it-
based on a lottery system where a lot of these educational outcomes are being achieved, so it's not. People aren't testing in.
If you're counseling out the students who are not performing well or not behaving well, then it's really easy to keep up your stats.
Well, I'd like to
And
see.
there's been
Reference on that.
considerable writing on this, and I can
Yeah,
provide those
yeah.
references as well.
Does anyone else?
I mean, I would just say that, I know that we're obviously here in Croton District, but in places like you're describing where the population is different, we've also seen charter schools just not be the solution. And I personally, what I see as a solution is investment in public schools. And so for me, right, for 27, 31, 32, I believe are adequate resolutions because as a board, a public school board that I think supports public schools and want to see more investment in all public schools across the state, that should be, at least in my mind, our route to a better educational system for everybody in the state.
But
And
hasn't
so,
that been the case?
what's that?
Hasn't that been what's been happening and children are still.
No, I think that charter school investments have gone to charter schools and not to public schools as much as should be happening. And so for me, I'm in support of these resolutions because of that overall concept. I know that we're looking at each
Mhm.
resolution as to kind of its intent. But philosophically, I think that investment and energy should be put towards our public school system.
I just want to clarify one thing though, that they are public schools and they are
They're
approved
publicly
and.
funded schools.
They're not public.
Yeah,
schools.
no, but they're accountable to the Board of Regents or to SUNY, like to education institutions.
But they're not
And they are-
accountable to
They're
us.
public schools that are privately run. Right, so they're privately run.
The public has elected us to be their representative. To be their representative
Where the
body.
taxes go. where their taxes go.
The public has elected us as a body to be their representatives in educational matters. And by that argument, then we as a body should have responsibility for the schools that our student in our district, that our students are attending beyond just ourselves. We should have some say in whether those schools are actually competent to do the things that they say that they do. The number of Yes, there are charter schools that are effective. I will not dispute that. There are also some charter schools that have been monumental failures.
Yeah, correct.
Monumental failures. And I think that we have an absolute affirmative duty to weigh in on that topic. And that we should ask NISBA to lobby for us to have the power to do that.
If I might, just with respect to 27, I think that districts should be able to consent to new charter school applications. I think that they shouldn't just be allowed to pop up based on what SUNY agrees to. On number 31, opposes legislation expanding New York State's charter schools. I agree with that. I don't think charter schools should be expanded in New York State. And number 32, the New York State School Boards Association supports legislative changes that reduce the impact of New York State's charter schools on traditional districts. I'm also in favor of that, given the financial implications of charter schools and public education in the state.
I
So,
concur with that.
could we do?
Yes, I was
Let's
saying,
go through each one.
does anyone have any other comments? Omar?
You agree, the history of charter schools and school vouchers, the impetus behind it was to increase competition, right? And the rationale was to increase competition, to increase outcomes. The reality is, and this is based on research, probably 10 years ago. So the research may be dated, but the findings are, there weren't significant differences in outcomes between students going to charter schools on average, like students that went to public schools. And what ended up happening at the local level was a recycling of resources from the public system into the charter system. And like Josh was saying before, many schools filter out students that they know won't perform well. And so the measures that there's some, not all, because some charter schools, ones in Harlem, institutions, they're doing fantastic, but some charter schools will only admit students that they know will be successful, know that they're going to be succeed in school. So that's kind of the background, my understanding of the background for charter schools. And given that, I mean, it's I agree with the third, I guess, Anna's recommendation.
Yeah, I'm not expecting anyone actually to probably agree with me, so you can just probably blanket statement, like all of you are gonna, but, it still stands, and I don't think that that's actually true. It depends what you read, what you watch, right, and how you look at the data, that charter schools haven't done substantially better in different areas. If you look at traditional public schools as a whole and charter schools as a whole, you may not see a lot of difference, but if you look at actually the makeup of the students who are in charter schools, particularly the minorities communities of Black and Hispanic and low income, if you compare their educational outcomes with that same population in traditional public schools in those areas. So again, and you can read Thomas Sowell, he wrote a full book about this, brilliant doctor of economics from, Stanford. Looks at tons of data, unpacks New York City's charter schools. And if you look at that, those populations of actually traditional public schools and charter schools in the same building in New York City. Okay, 5 different, he goes through 5 different charter school networks. Okay, tons of schools, tons of grades. They're in those populations, same makeup of race and socioeconomic status in the same schools, in the same grades. And there are significant positive educational outcomes for the children enrolled in charter schools. So, I just want to say we all don't have the same facts. We all are not experts on this. We all read our own media and, learn our own things. But it is worth paying attention to. I brought the book. You should take it home. You should read it, get a different perspective, talk about it. We can all share your resources with me. Let's take a look. Let's talk about it. But I think, this is really, this is truly not supporting what I consider and what I've learned about and what I do support of equity, right? Of really helping people who don't have who don't start at the same place, an opportunity where these three laws are limiting charter school opportunities for kids and parents to choose those options for their children. And we should, in the traditional public schools, should also be doing the same. So it's not a one versus the other. I consider them both public schools. I support public education, and I think that we should be looking for all different kinds of opportunities to help raise children up, out of these situations where they're not learning and they're not ready for college and beyond.
Thank you, Mary. Does anyone else have any other comments? Josh?
Number one, this is the New York State School Boards Association.
Correct.
Not the New York State Charter Schools Association. It is the New York State School Boards Association to advocate for the success of New York State public schools. That is its purpose. And I think it is,
I don't think even
they
charter
are not a
schools
public
think they're
school when
public
they are not
schools.
controlled by an elected school board.
I don't even think charter schools think they're public schools. I think they're
Yeah.
publicly funded.
They may
So I don't want to see us
Doesn't
get
make
into an
it
endless
so.
debate of whether charter school, on the philosophies of charter schools or public schools, because we do have business to attend to.
Yeah,
Does anyone have, Joe, you want to finish up your
Let
comment?
me just finish my comment. So that's point number one. Point number two, I will make the same point that I made with the other resolution, where taking this into account together with the other resolutions that are here, particularly the resolution concerning comprehensive reform of the foundation aid formula. The real solution to improving the education of minorities is not to siphon off the students into different schools, it's to properly fund the schools with adequate funding so that those students may be effectively educated in public schools. As mandated by the New York State Constitution, which says that the state shall provide each student with an effective education. And therefore, I'm in favor of all three of these resolutions.
Can I get a thumbs up, thumbs down on 27th?
How many? I can't see Omar or Thea.
6. Okay. 31.
Wait, she had thumbs down.
I'm sorry, Mary's thumbs down.
I want to shoot.
31.
Is that 6?
Five at Omar's thinking.
No, not thumbs up.
Okay,
Oh,
so it's 5,
5.
thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
I'm staying.
oh, wait,
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
Okay, so it's,
All
so Omar's abstaining.
I'm staying.
All right. And then 32.
Omar, is that up?
he's thumbs up.
I also read this one is reducing the impact of New York State's charter schools on traditional districts could be making modifications to the charter schools to reduce the impact. It's not necessarily just assisting the traditional district.
Sarah, you have 6
I have
Yep.
6. Thumbs down.
there.
Okay. All right. Thank you
All right,
very
thank you
much.
for your time.
And Mary, thank you for putting together the overview of the process
This was
and for
great.
chairing the
This
advocacy
was
committee.
great.
Yes.
And understanding it. Thank you so much.
And I just want to say one thing, which is the discussion, although perhaps somewhat, I don't want to say heated, but I think the discussion, passionate. I think the discussion was good.
It was good.
We should have discussions
I
like
agree.
this about things that
I wish we could have a common set of facts to look at,
Right.
actually, that would
common
be.
set of facts is
Yeah,
always
that would be
difficult
good.
in any,
No, really, I mean,
Yeah.
from I would like to hear what you know, what you learned, what you've seen, before we have these discussions. It's really, we're all kind of just talking off like whatever we sort of know from wherever,
Yeah,
so that's something that maybe we could.
we could talk about that in board development.
Mhm.
All right, we will now move into instructional personnel. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the mentor appointment for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
So moved.
Second?
On the question?
Sorry. get back to the agenda.
All in favor? Oh,
Can you give me
Josh,
just a
sorry.
moment?
1 second, yeah.
Okay.
All in favor?
I,
Opposed, abstain, motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education accepts the amended mentor appointment as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question,
I apologize. Was
that was
Omar?
Theo.
Me.
Theo second.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain, motion carries. We will now move into donations. All right. Recommended action that the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation of $500 from David Powers as a contribution for the house system at the Carrie E. Tompkins Elementary School.
So moved.
Second?
On the question,
Do we know who David Powers is? Is he a parent? A resident? It didn't say on the.
Didn't say.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, they're not required to tell us.
Oh, yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
Actually, do we
sorry?
have any idea exactly how this might be spent?
Well, maybe we can talk a little about the house system and what kinds of things they might use it for.
I'm not aware of how it is specifically planned to be spent. I know that part of the goal is to make sure that we have, our students in our houses have connections with community organizations. So to the extent that some of them may involve trips off campus, anything like that, it could be potential costs associated with that, but I don't know. I think we typically have.
I don't need an answer tonight,
No,
Just go to the general fund and then we.
but it would be.
And
it would
maybe
be
some
useful.
bling, like t-shirts, like,
I'd just be
you know,
curious to know how we're spending
t-shirts,
that.
Well,
banners.
I
I
would,
thought you said for teachers, I'm
No.
sorry.
I would add that, when one of the things that was presented to us, and I think was even presented at our last meeting, was that there are, lanyards that, and the students have, and there are team building
Yeah.
activities
Mhm.
within each house that are gonna happen. And
Yeah, there's
I
certainly
imagine
activities.
Yeah,
They're
there's
starting from
activities for which
scratch,
they'll,
right?
they'll use that money.
I understand. I don't need detail now. I'd just be interested at some point in the future if we could understand that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll pass that
It
along.
doesn't have to be
Carrie.
in tremendous detail.
Yeah. We'll make sure that's in an update to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation in the amount of $200 from Eric Kohler and New York Life as a contribution to the general fund at the Carrie E. Tompkins Elementary School.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion carries. Right, once again, we'd like to thank our donors for their support of our schools. We very much appreciate it, and it's always good to have support for our students, so thank you. We will now move into the consent agenda. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Second?
On the question?
I'm sorry, was that Omar that was you?
Yeah, that was
Yes.
Omar.
And on the question,
On the question, yeah.
does 6.6 special education recommendations include?
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, just to continue that thought, anything that a certain
I
board
would,
member needs
I
to
would
abstain from?
separate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, they get separated out. Any other questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain? Motion carries. All right, we're now moving into the closing of the meeting, and we will have our second hearing with the public. If anyone would like to speak. If you'd like to come up to podium. Okay, all right, so then we will move into board reports. You just had a fairly lengthy advocacy discussion, so I think we've covered what we did in our advocacy meeting. We'll move into audits,
Audit met before the meeting.
right?
Go through the financials. Just again, want to echo what Justin, Stephen, and great job, Denise, Barry, Jackie, Tracy, Amy, Risa, Susan, Sue, Jeff, Joan, Denise.
Yeah.
I know I forgot somebody. But I apologize for whoever I forgot.
Whole team.
Great
Also
job.
Denise Cuomo, who does some of the collections as well.
Communications.
We meet
Next Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday.
Wait for a schedule of upcoming meetings. I'll get them to Tracy so we can get them on the district calendar.
Perfect.
Go team.
All right. And board development, I do believe we have a meeting coming up
Yes.
soon as well. The exact date escapes me,
Right.
but it is on the calendar. So we will need to discuss retreat plan.
Yes.
Anything else? Policy has not met, correct?
Right, we have not scheduled another meeting yet, I think,
Is it because you missed me?
yes. Because we miss honors, so we're gonna put on some of that, we get it back. No, and we've got a bunch of things we are working on, but a lot of it will involve kind of, work before we get together to have some things to present.
All right, we'll now move into polling with board. Does anyone have anything for polling? Josh?
Yes, I attended the CET Building Planning Council meeting today. It was the first meeting of the year, mainly introductions and some discussion of topics that may be on the agenda. There's a lot of interest in discussing the future facilities plan and its further development. And also there was some discussion about potentially having some discussion about expanding co-curricular opportunities at CET as a possible topic of discussion, ideas for providing more. That's something that is of interest. And there was and a request from the Building Planning Council to let us know, to let the council know about upcoming policy matters that may impact CET. And I mentioned that there's a lot, we have a large docket in the policy committee, and that there probably will be things coming to Building Planning Councils for review.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, I attended the Croydon Harmon High School Building Planning Council this afternoon. First thing I'm going to say is I was very surprised, because I haven't served on that before, that a large number of students have been invited to be part of Building Planning Council. I think 5 students, in addition to staff and parents, community members, administrators, and myself as the board representative. And it was really good because we got a lot of input from them. And those students were not, were not reticent to talk about the things that concern them, and the things that they thought concerned other students, and about the things that we would be dealing with over the coming year. There was discussion of preliminary discussion on how the high school goals will fit into and meet the district goals. Each of the 4 guiding thoughts or guiding principles that we have identified as the district goals, and different things that the administration, building administration, high school is thinking about in that regard. Probably there's going to be more work to be done before that is presented. So I don't want to talk about all of the details about that, because we will hear about it. The one thing they did mention that we should all keep on our calendar, and we talked about the facilities work. We talked about Bill Daggett, who will be here next week, and that students and parents are invited to attend the evening on October 13th, the talk by Bill Daggett. Talked about the Hall of Distinguished Graduates, so you can all put on your calendars that on November 10th, the two new honorees in the Hall of Distinguished Graduates will be here for a day in this high school. And shortly after, the word will go out as to who they are and those accomplishments they've had. And certainly board members, we're told board members should feel free if they're available on Thursday the 10th to come and be at the assembly, meet them, whatever you're available.
Quickly, again, Sarah had already said this, as part of the communications committee, we're going to be at the Oktoberfest this Saturday. So if anybody could go, please get me your availability, or if you plan on stopping by. This came out of a conversation in the communications committee regarding the Black Cow and how that was kind of like needed to be judged. And speaking to Mr. Walker, our superintendent, I had asked how we do it in different, how he has seen it done in different districts, and it really was about going where the public is. So we hope to be at more of those events to interact with our community and not just parents or any certain area. Proven. The other thing I wanted to say was that I attended back to school night at the high school as a parent and as a board member. And aside from the daunting bell schedule, which like immediately made me relive my ninth grade year, I want to just say that a lot, and I want to say this to my fellow board members, the principles that we're talking about here, about the district, our students being in environments where they could take risks, and the different kinds of learning that we're talking about implementing, it was alive and well at the high school and back to school night, hearing our teachers talk about how they want students to, feel okay to fail. It was really, I came home, my husband and I couldn't both go because he had to be at home with the girls and we've been trading. And I said to him, you would be really proud of where we decided to make a home based on my evening tonight at the school. So I do want to thank Mr. Maxim and Dr. Duback for giving parents the opportunity to go in and really just relive your child's schedule. You had to go to all of those classes and sit in those classrooms and hear about the curriculum and the methods and the approach. And it was really, really, really exciting. Good stuff, as Mom said. Anyway, yeah.
Anything else? for Paul?
PVC Building Planning Council met today as well. There's a great deal of interest on the future facilities work that's being done. One of the things we're going to be working on this year as a group is understanding the transition points and maybe think through a communication campaign and how we communicate and have the communication received better by parents, because I think there is communication that's being lost. So just thinking through how we can communicate better around those transition points of PVC.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have anything for Colin?
I will just add to Omar's point, we were talking during communications about actually having the board communicating with students regarding some of that. And I think some of that message going home could be more of like a family discussion.
Yeah.
Because then it's coming home. We'll talk about it more. We've been talking about this.
We don't want anything to do.
Well, just briefly, I had the opportunity to attend the West Putt Fall Roundtables earlier this week. I got this on Tuesday. My days are blending together. There was a great turnout. There was probably about 40 people there from different regional school boards and administration to surround and discuss various topics. I think everyone will have already received the email that went out that kind of gave an overview of the things that were discussed at each of those different roundtables. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet, I would highly recommend it. And just to keep apprised of the events calendar going on. I know they will be having their next community conversation. They will be shifted from last year's town halls to these community conversations. The first one was last week or the week before.
in the evening, and then this following one in, I think in November, will be midday. So just to keep an eye out on the calendar. They're great resources for being able to hear what's going on in other districts, hear about issues that are affecting other districts and that are important to other districts in ways that we can learn from each other in terms of board best practices, but also in terms of advocacy as well. So I would just highly recommend them. And then, yeah, I think that's it. I don't have anything else for polling. All right, so items needed for the next Board of Education meeting. So as we said, the next meeting will be our October 20th work session, where we will have on the agenda a resolution regarding the proposed capital project. So any questions that the board has with regard to the proposal, any additional questions, if you can please get them to Neil and I. I would say by today's date is the 6th, by the 10th, so that we can get them to administration.
10th.
Yeah.
Schools closed. 10th.
Yeah. We I'm can sorry, still get it
The
to them.
11th. You can still get it to me.
Yeah.
My email's not closed.
Okay, I
Don't
did.
you don't text us on the weekend.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Anyways, okay, by the morning of the 11th, if you could get them back to us so that we can share them with administration. And also, as the Superintendent Walker mentioned earlier, we will also expect to have a presentation from the strategic planning team, which Omar and I were a part of. We're really excited to hear, for the board to hear, and the community hears the work that's been going on there. So I think that is all I've got. All right.
I just a question, since you're talking about agendas. I know that historically October has been the student achievement board presentation. And we have not received an update on that student achievement data since last October. So I was really looking forward to that, just to make sure that we're getting a pulse on our students, ELA, math, A tests, STAR tests, whatever data you do collect and could share with the board,
So, and I think last year we did have that in October, but we haven't necessarily always historically had it in October. And I think in the coming weeks first up with our strategic planning, and then also with with upcoming discussions that will really be looking and speaking about not just data, but also evidence that we see of the learning that's going on in the building. So I expect that we will have a robust work session schedule that we're working on.
So
right now.
as a board trustee, I would just ask that I could, and ideally the whole board, right, could have a copy of that data prior to that meeting to find out at the aggregate level, by student group, how we're doing.
Yeah.
Right, because that happened in the spring, so it would be helpful going into that strategic plan, make sure that we're also paying attention to where our students are at with regard to reading, right?
So you would like to have that data prior to
Correct. Yeah.
the October.
And then we
20th
can
meeting.
hear about the evidence.
As of right now, New York
Yeah.
State still has the New York State testing program data embargoed for aggregate data.
Right,
So that's not released and we're not sure when it will be available to
but
us.
we have the district level, correct?
We do have district
Right,
level.
yeah, I want the district level. And that would also be related to the STAR test. I don't think we've gotten an update since last winter on the STAR results. Again, it's our responsibility for trustees. We want to make sure we're, aware of what's happening related to the educational outcomes. Also, I was wondering, have the school level goals been created yet? Because I know we talked about the district goals, questions. The superintendent's goals, I know Steve, you sent those, but the school level goals, have those been created? And if so, those could be sent to the board, that would be.
Those we're having conversations with the building leaders now about those, John and I. The building leaders, as the board knows, report to me. So I would want to have some further conversation about whether or not it's appropriate to share building administrator goals with the board, to be candid.
Oh, not of the administrators, the building goals,
They're right,
the
but
building
they're
goals.
to a certain extent also the administrators' goals. So
I thought in prior
I
discussions,
think-
we talked about, you were gonna provide those to the board so that we could see what the actual
What
outcomes were. that
what we
were-
talked about was we'll use work sessions to have the building leaders and directors come and speak about how their work and to a certain extent, then the goals align with the guiding questions,
Mhm.
right? But to submit the actual documents themselves, I think would be a different practice than what's happened before, and I would want to have some further discussion with the board about that.
Mhm.
And so we intend that our first, so that the November work session, we have slotted to begin sort of the first of those conversations, that first, I think we're targeting that first guiding question, that we would be using that work session to discuss that and to hear from our building level administrators with how that work is being done and how that work is being operationalized in our schools.
I just have another question. Are we going to be doing the learning walks?
Learning walks, yeah, so yeah, on our agenda for board development,
For
actually,
board
just try
development,
to set those up, and then we can send out a schedule to everybody, but yes,
Okay,
yes. We will do learning walks again this year.
just so, do you know, just so you
I've
know?
heard of them.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
very
So
exciting.
we're-
Yeah.
All right, okay.
They're fantastic, we, as a board member, highly recommend being, getting out and getting into each of the buildings for a learning walk. So. Have anything else? All right, recommended action that the board adjourns this meeting at 10:06 PM.
Second,
I'm sorry, who?
Theo.
Theo and then Anna.
I know. Here I am.
Theo and Anna.
Anna,
Thank you.
all in favor?
I-
Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. All right, thank you very much. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining.